Good morning and welcome to Gym Talk, Moments in Leadership, where we skip the corporate jargon and get real about leadership. Because let's be honest, most of what you hear about leadership sounds great in theory and falls apart in practice. So grab your coffee, your tea, or whatever keeps you going, and let's talk leadership. Today, we'll be tackling one of the biggest traps every leader and executive falls into at some point or another, and it's firefighting mode. And I see this at every single level. So don't be afraid to admit it that you fall into the trap too. Every decision still lands on your desk. You don't have a leadership team then. You have a never ending backlog, and that's a problem. The best leaders don't just solve problems, they build teams that build problems. So let's get started. Our rules of engagement is to get out there, comment, and really engage in this stream. Say hello. Tell me where you're coming from, what you do. Drop a message if you ever had a day where you felt like all you did was put out fires. And I know you've had them, so let's put them out there. My personal story, well, I could tell you I was an AVP in a company called Computer Associates, which no longer really exists. I was leading software engineers, QA engineers, program management, and actually, I lived pretty close to the office. It was a pretty sweet deal. It was only 7 miles from the office. I could exercise in the morning and still get to the office pretty early. It was a great setup, right? Well, one morning, I'm parking in the parking lot and my phone starts ringing. I didn't even get in the office yet. Before I can make it to my desk, I could look around the hallway and see a line of people waiting to talk to me. At that moment, I only had one thought. You know what it was? Holy shit, I am not going to get anything done today. And that's when I realized I wasn't leading. I was a professional firefighter. Every issue, every decision, every problem landed right back on my plate. If you're a senior leader or an executive and you're living this right now, you're not alone. But here's the truth. You cannot grow your team. You cannot grow your department. You cannot certainly grow your company if you're stuck in firefighter mode. So let's talk about that. Let me guess. You're supposed to be leading, driving strategy, setting vision, but instead you're buried in decisions, stuck in meetings that go nowhere. And putting out fires your team should be landing themselves. Sound familiar? Well, let me hit you with the truth. You don't have a leadership team. You have a backlog, and you are the bottleneck. Do these pains sound familiar? You've got a team of senior managers and directors, yet somehow everything lands back on your plate. You're stuck in meeting after meeting, but nothing seems to move forward with tons of problems and no solutions. You're making calls on decisions your team should be handling, but you're doing it because they don't. Why? Because you don't have leaders, you have managers. Your team is playing it safe. They're waiting for direction. They're escalating every decision instead of owning them. Here's the real question. How long are you going to put up with this? Drop a comment right now. What's the number one thing holding you back from strategic leadership? I want to say hello to Anne from San Jose. Thank you for joining us today. And it is about time. So, I had two clients this week talking about this specific problem. Not to give you any real names here, right? But I want to tell you, let's call her Emily. She actually is a real total rock star. She's the kind of leader who delivers no matter what the impossible task. And that's exactly why she's drowning. Her boss dropped yet another massive project on her desk. Why? Well, because there's no one else to do it. We don't have anybody else, so you have to do it. At the same time, Emily's boss is telling her to be more strategic. It's like being a drummer asked to lead the band while doing a solo. It doesn't quite work that way. So here's the thing. I hear this every week. I talk to dozens of leaders every week across industries, company sizes, and I hear the same thing. Directors whose plates are overflowing, VPs who are so buried because they have to take on work from their team because their team is so busy. C suite executives, CTOs tell me how frustrated they are because they don't have leaders. They have glorified managers waiting to be told what to do. So, in my session with Emily, I flipped the script. Instead of asking, how are you going to get this all done? Let's put together a project plan. Let's make this happen. I asked something different. I asked, how do you stop doing and start leading? Part of the answer, stop being everybody's safety net. You need to start building problem solvers, not problem givers. Shift your script. Stop having all the answers and start asking the right questions. Do you have questions? Put them in the comment. I would love to talk about them today. Any questions? So, what is this costing you? You think being a go to problem solver makes you a great leader. Think again. It's actually killing your momentum, draining your time, and pushing your people out the door. If you're one of those making all the decisions, guess what? No one else is learning how. You're teaching them to depend on you. And when that happens, your best people don't stick around. They go where they can actually grow. So let's talk about what this is actually costing you before it becomes too late. So, one, you're getting turnover and talent drain. High performers don't stay in environments where they're just, order takers, task doers. Your people want to grow, they want to lead, they want to make their own decisions. And right now, they don't see a path forward because you are in the way. You don't think this is a real thing? Well, I tell you this, I did some research, and actually, in the US, across the US, the cost of turnover is 1 trillion. Yes, 1 trillion with a T. $1 trillion a year is lost in turnover costs. And the number one reason are leaders like you. You need to get out of their way and grow your people. Second biggest reason, wasted time and slow decisions. Harvard Business Review says leaders waste 40% of their time on low value tasks. Tell me, how many low value tasks do you see yourself doing? How do you see those tasks that you should be giving to somebody else? When I talk to leaders every day, right? I was talking to Emily this week, right? 40% of her time, actually for her, more is on tasks she should be giving to other people. So let's think about this a second. If you're a 1,000 person company, 1,000 people, and 40% of everybody's time is wasted, that means 4,000 hours per week. Think about that, 4,000 hours per week. What do you think that adds up to? For a 1,000 person company, that adds up to 10, someplace between 10 and $20 million a year in lost productivity because you're not doing the work you should be doing. You're doing the work your team should be doing, and they're slow making decisions. Ah, let's talk about that even more. So, slow decision makers cost companies 5 to 10% of their annual revenue. So if you're a $50 million business, guess what? That's $5 million a year lost, gone. Why? Because people take time to make decisions. Analysis paralysis, you might have heard that. So if you think staying involved in every single decision is helping, do the math. Your leadership style is literally costing your company millions. And if you don't fix this, you won't just burn out. Your company stalls, growth stops, it becomes crippling the momentum, really costing the company lots and lots of money. So if your boss starts to turn around and see that you are the bottleneck, or worse, the board sees that you are the bottleneck, what are they going to do? They're going to find somebody else who can do the job and be more strategic, right? So your leadership pipeline, you're growing your people, is costing you money. Every company swears they have a leadership pipeline until they don't. If you think your team is ready to step up, but when a crisis happens, guess what? All roads still lead to you. The decision bottleneck, project stall. Your best people hesitate instead of taking the lead. Why? We can go back to my 4 fears of leadership, but essentially, they're afraid to make decisions because you make them for them. So they don't make decisions. They wait for it to be bubbled up to you and back down again to them. This takes time. And then when your top performer walks out the door because they're tired are waiting for real responsibility, you're putting your entire organization at risk. What are you going to do? Everybody's now looking to you, and you can't get anything done with performers leaving. So let's talk about this. Remember, you did not take this role as a leader to be a human fire extinguisher. It's time for you to stop managing problems and start building leaders who can solve them. In my discussion this week with Emily, she asked me, well, when's a good time for me to start teaching people to make decisions and to take things on? Right now, I am in the middle of tons of projects. Is now the time, or should I wait until let me just get through this month or next month and then it'll be okay? I hear this all the time. I just need to get through the week. I just need to get through the month. And then it's, I need to get through the next month and then the next month. And it's the same thing over and over again. You must stop, draw that line in the sand and say, now I'm going to work differently. That's what I did when I had that line out the door. I said, I'm going to work differently. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. I didn't have something like this to tell me things to try. And this is what we're going to do next. Here are 4 things to start looking at. 1, problem number 1, you promote high performers, but you don't train them to lead. For example, in my world, right? I have software developers. I have somebody who codes really well, does a good job. So we make them a team lead. And as a team lead, that person helps the team code better, reach standards. That's really great. It helps. Then we make that person a manager. And this is where we lose on both ends because we have someone who does not know how to manage, and we lost a good technician because they have to spend time to manage. This is where micromanaging starts because they say, oh, I got here because I know what I'm doing. So you do it exactly the way I do it. And then it starts the cycle. You really need to train your people to lead. The fix, coaching, mentorship, structured leadership training before they get promoted, right? If you're going from a coder to a team lead to a manager, and oh, by the way, the next thing that happens that I see often, 2 years down the line, 3 years down the line, that manager becomes a director and they become totally stuck, overwhelmed with a ton of work to do because they don't know how to lead, they don't know how to make decisions, they don't know how to delegate, and they are working like crazy. So, promote top performers, but train them first. Get them ready for that position because management, leading is a whole different skill set. Problem number 2, your managers lack decision-making frameworks. They don't know how to make decisions. I hear this all the time, that I have people who they get lost. They just want to follow a process so I don't have to make decisions. But when you get to different levels, you must make those decisions. That's how it works. So without the understanding of different frameworks to make decisions and how that works, they don't make decisions. Often, I see, especially in tech companies, and you may see this in others as well, that they push decisions off, either to another team, another group, up to the boss, or upper management, which takes a lot of time. But the real reason they do that is so that when things don't really work, they have a finger to point to. You're building a culture of blame. Oh, I would have never done it that way if the decision were me. In fact, one time, I was in this meeting, and the CTO basically asked the head architect a question. And the head architect quest answered the question with a, well, if it were up to me, I would. And the CTO stopped him there. It is up to you. So do you catch the difference there? He's saying if it were up to me, basically pushing off the decision making, that it's somebody else's. So if the CTO agreed with him and said, go ahead and do that, it would have been the CTO's decisions, not the head architect. So we need a way to train your high performers to lead and make decisions before they get to there. I'll tell you one other quick story. And you might have heard me reference a prior boss of mine called, his name is Rob. His real name is Rob, actually. And when I came under him, um, I went and talked to him basically like my previous bosses, like, here's what's going on, blah, blah, blah. What do you want to do? And my previous bosses were giving me the answer. They trained me to ask first. Rob said something different. He said to me, I don't know. That's what the F I have you for. Ah, it really is my decision. So train your people, give them decision-making frameworks, teach them how to prioritize, because as we get to that director level, you get all kinds of conflicting priorities. We need to weigh through them. Okay, problem number 3. You train, but you don't reinforce. And this is really funny. Leadership development is not an event. Sending someone to a 3-day class or even shorter and expecting them to return back to work as an expert just sounds ludicrous, but that's what we do. So really, how humans learn is by doing. We learn by taking things and trying them out. So you need coaching, accountability, real world application. So anytime you send somebody for training, must get them to use those things. Otherwise, you end up in what we call the 6 o'clock track. You go to the class, you have a nice binder, you come back at 6 o'clock, and that binder just goes on the shelf, and you do nothing with it. 70-80% of what you learned is gone in a week. You must start putting things into action. Problem number 4, my favorite one. Things are getting tight. Budgets are getting tight. The first thing we do is cut leadership development to save money. The problem is the leadership training isn't a cost, it's an investment. This is where the best companies double down on development now. At times of uncertainty, we need better leaders. Times of budget crisis, we need better leaders. Times of exponential growth, we need better leaders. So tell me, Which of these challenges are holding your company back now? Is it number one, you promote high performers, but you don't train them to lead? Your mid level managers lack decision making tools? Number three, you train but don't reinforce? Or number four, you're cutting leadership development and thinking you're saving money? If you have any questions about that, or you see that in your organization, please put them in the comments here. I would love to talk about it. So let's put this together a little bit. If you're ready to start leading, why don't you drop the word lead in the comments and we'll talk about that. But your leadership pipeline, your challenge, if every decision still lands on your desk, you have a leadership problem. Develop leaders before they get promoted. Teach decision making, not just management. Decision making, not just management. Stop treating leadership training like a nice to have. It's a real thing. And if you are a senior manager or you are a director, you should be watching and listening to this before your next annual review so that you could be set up for that next promotion. Okay, so this is it. This is a wrap. Remember, great leadership isn't about knowing everything. It's about moving forward anyway. If today any of this hit home, share it with anyone who needs it. See you next time at Gym Talk, Moments in Leadership. DM me if you want to talk about strategy and leadership. Share this session and let's go forward. I am looking forward to seeing you in our next stream. Have a great morning.